Imagine a city where every street belongs to somebody, a city where one wrong move can start a war, and where making money isn't enough. You have to survive long enough to keep it. Welcome back to the Westies. Tonight, we're heading back into the brutal streets of early 1980s Hell's Kitchen for episode 6, titled Rad Tad. And this time, the danger isn't coming from just one direction. The Italians are watching, the FBI is closing in, the IRA is preparing its own operation, and inside the Westies themselves, the younger generation is becoming increasingly difficult for Eamon Sweeney to control. At the center of all this is Jimmy Roarke. Roarke wants money. More importantly, he wants power. But episode 6 is about to show us something very important. Sometimes the fastest way to get rich is also the fastest way to destroy everything you've built. Before we get into what happens, let's quickly remember where we left these characters. Sweeney has spent much of the season trying to keep the Westies alive by maintaining a fragile relationship with the Italian Mafia. That relationship is extremely important, because the Westies may be feared on their own streets, but they are still dramatically outnumbered by New York's Italian crime families. Sweeney understands that. Roarke? He's beginning to think the old rules don't apply to him anymore. And that difference in attitude is becoming one of the biggest problems inside the gang. In the previous episode, Sweeney gave Roarke permission to sell cocaine, but there was a catch. Roarke had to find the supply himself. That sounds like an opportunity, but in the world of the Westies, an opportunity is usually just another word for danger. Because the moment Roarke starts looking for cocaine, he risks crossing lines that the Italian Mafia has already drawn. And John Gotti is watching. Gotti already suspects that the Westies may be pushing against the agreement with Castellano. So Roarke isn't simply trying to make a drug deal, he's gambling with the future of the entire gang. And that's where episode 6 begins to tighten the noose. Roarke needs money to make his move, so he turns to Ruby Stein. And Ruby gives him something Roarke desperately needs, a loan. But this isn't friendly money. This isn't the kind of loan where you shake hands, promise to pay it back, and walk away. This is Hell's Kitchen. Every dollar comes with a price. Roarke takes the risk because he believes the cocaine deal will pay off. And at first, the plan looks simple. Get the product, meet the buyer, make the exchange, take the profit, walk away. Except there is one problem. The buyer isn't some street-level criminal. He's a wealthy newcomer from downtown, a silver-spooned hotshot who represents a completely different world from Roarke is. And that difference matters, because Roarke is used to dealing with people who understand the rules of the street. This new player has money, connections, confidence, and perhaps most importantly, he doesn't need Roarke nearly as much as Roarke needs him. That imbalance makes the danger dangerous from the very beginning. Roarke has borrowed money, he's putting his reputation on the line, and he's already operating in territory where the wrong person finding out could bring the Italians down on him. Then comes the moment that changes everything. The deal doesn't work. It doesn't simply become difficult, it implodes, and suddenly Roarke is staring at a problem much bigger than a failed transaction. He has borrowed money, he has taken a major risk, and now he may have nothing to show for it. But here's the question that hangs over the entire episode. What happens when Jimmy Roarke can't pay? Because Ruby Stein is not the only person who could come looking for his money, and the people above Roarke may be even less forgiving. This is where episode 6 starts turning Roarke's ambition against him. For weeks, he's been pushing forward. He's been trying to prove that the Westies can do business without constantly asking permission from the old guard. But now that ambition has created a trap, and Roarke may have just walked straight into it. But his problems aren't the only ones growing, because while Roarke is fighting a financial disaster, another man is being pushed into an even more dangerous position, Keenan. And what happens with Keenan could ultimately hurt the Westies far more than one failed cocaine deal, because Keenan isn't simply watching the gang anymore, he's being asked to penetrate it, and this time he's going after someone much closer to Sweeney. But what happens next changes everything. Keenan has always been one of the most complicated figures in the Westies. He's a police officer, but he understands the people he's investigating. He knows Hell's Kitchen. He knows the Westies. And because of his personal connections to the neighborhood, he isn't looking at this criminal world from the outside. He's been part of it in one way or another for a long time. That's exactly why Polk sees him as useful. The FBI doesn't simply want information. They want access. They want someone who can get close enough to the Westies to expose what is happening behind closed doors. And Keenan is the perfect candidate. Except there is a problem. The closer Keenan gets to the gang, the more dangerous his position becomes. And in episode 6, Polk continues pushing him towards a decision that could permanently change his life. Wear a wire. Think about what that means. Keenan isn't being asked to observe. He's being asked to betray.
He's being asked to walk into a room with people who may trust him and secretly record them. One mistake could expose him, and if the Westies discover what he's doing, there may not be a second chance. But Polk doesn't back off. Instead, Keenan takes a different approach. He targets an older member of the Westies. And this is important, because Keenan isn't necessarily going after this man because he's the biggest threat. He's going after him because he can be used as leverage. The target becomes a pressure point, a way to get closer to Sweeney, and that's the real game. Keenan wants information, Polk wants results, and Sweeney wants to keep control of his organization. 3 men, 3 different objectives, and eventually those objectives are going to collide. But while this is happening, the Westies have another problem. Their internal generational divide is getting worse. Sweeney represents the old guard. He understands patience. He understands alliances. He understands that sometimes surviving means knowing when not to fight. Roarke represents something completely different. He's younger, more aggressive, and increasingly willing to take risks. That difference has been building throughout the season, and the failed cocaine deal makes it even more dangerous, because Roarke doesn't just have to answer to Sweeney, he has to answer to the people who gave him money, and he has to worry about the Italians. One mistake could make Sweeney look weak, and if Sweeney looks weak, other people will notice. That's how power works in organized crime. You don't necessarily lose control when someone defeats you. Sometimes you lose control when people simply start believing you can be defeated, and Roarke's behavior is beginning to create that possibility. Meanwhile, another storyline is moving towards a much larger explosion. Bridget Walsh. Bridget's story has been running alongside the Westies conflict, but episode 6 pushes it forward in a major way. Bridget is connected to Brendan Cahill and an IRA operation, and now the operation's entering a much more active phase. The target? Colonel Markham. Bridget and the IRA cell make their move, and suddenly the series expands beyond the criminal politics of Hell's Kitchen. This isn't just about territory anymore. It isn't just about cocaine. It isn't even just about the mafia. There are political motivations behind Bridget's mission, and that makes her storyline fundamentally different from Roarke's. Roarke wants money and influence. Sweeney wants survival. Keenan wants to navigate 2 worlds without losing himself. But Bridget is involved in something driven by ideology. That makes her extremely dangerous, because people who are fighting for money can sometimes be bought. People fighting for survival can sometimes be threatened. But what do you do with someone who believes the mission itself is worth the price? That's the question episode 6 begins to ask. And Bridget's operation is no longer sitting quietly in the background. It's moving. The target is being approached. The IRA cell is becoming more active, and the consequences could reach far beyond Hell's Kitchen. Now look at everything happening at once. Roarke's cocaine deal has collapsed. Keenan is being pushed deeper into his undercover role. Sweeney is trying to maintain control. The Italians are watching, and Bridget's IRA operation is escalating. There are now too many moving pieces, and when a criminal organization has this many problems happening at the same time, something eventually breaks. But which one? Roarke? Keenan? Sweeney? Or Bridget? No one expected what happens next.
By now, Roarke's failed cocaine deal has created a serious problem. He borrowed money from Ruby Stein, expecting a big return, but the deal collapses, leaving him with debt, pressure, and very few options. And Roarke can't afford to look weak, because the Italians are already watching the Westies. Sweeney knows that one reckless move could destroy the fragile peace they've worked so hard to maintain. But Roarke isn't interested in playing by the old rules. He wants money, he wants respect, and most importantly, he wants independence. Meanwhile, Keenan is being pushed deeper into his dangerous double life. Polk wants him to wear a wire and get closer to the Westies, but every step forward puts Keenan at greater risk of being exposed. If Sweeney discovers the truth, Keenan could be finished. Then there's Bridget. Her connection to the IRA is becoming much more dangerous as the operation against Colonel Markham moves forward. What started as a separate storyline is now becoming another major threat hanging over everyone. And that's what makes this episode so tense. Roarke is trapped by his own ambition. Keenan is trapped between 2 sides. Bridget is trapped inside a dangerous mission, and Sweeney is desperately trying to keep the Westies together. But these problems are no longer separate. They're beginning to collide. And when that happens, someone is going to get hurt. The Westies may still look powerful from the outside, but from within, the cracks are getting bigger. And the closer we get to the season finale, the harder it becomes to see how Sweeney can keep his empire from falling apart. Because the real enemy may not be standing outside the Westies. It may already be sitting among them. By the end of episode 6, one thing becomes clear. The Westies are in serious trouble. Roarke's failed drug deal leaves him exposed, while Sweeney struggles to keep control of the younger members. At the same time, Keenan is being pushed deeper into his undercover operation. Every conversation brings him closer to being discovered, and Bridget's IRA mission is becoming even more dangerous. All these storylines are now moving toward the same point. The Westies are fighting enemies outside the gang, but the bigger danger may be the division growing inside it. Roarke wants power, Sweeney wants stability, Keenan is caught between loyalty and duty, and Bridget is committed to a mission that could have deadly consequences. As the season moves toward its final episodes, the fragile balance in Hell's Kitchen is beginning to collapse. The question now isn't whether trouble is coming, it's who will survive when it arrives.